All right, so we just sort of described the process. Do you have any questions about the process?
Mm-mm.
You're going to hear Mick go into his slow talking mode, which I try to use for a person of inquiry because it's just more effective if I slow down, because that's, again, full disclosure, and you probably know me, I don't know that you know me well, but know me well enough to know that I do everything really fast. And I walk fast, and I talk fast, and that's not what this is really meant to be. So you're really like, what the hell is he doing? Talking all slow and weird, you know? But that's my learning, is I'm trying to really be intentional and slowing down. So the first question I wanted to ask is just, and where this came from was talking to Tammy about some successes within the PPL division. I don't limit you to that. I really want this to be about what you're proud of, not me saying, let's go there, you know. But just a piece of practice over the last, 30, 60, 90 days, something you've done in your work that you're really, really proud of, and let's just talk about it and dig into it a little bit. And you just got promoted, which is also something we could talk about. You're working towards whatever it was you did to put yourself in that position. I mean, so there's lots of different possibilities.
Okay. So where do you want to start?
I want to start wherever you want to start.
Everywhere.
You can start. What is something? What are you most proud of over the last 60, 90? Because you got a lot of good stuff happening. But what are you most proud of over the last little bit?
Well, I guess I am going to talk about that case because that's kind of what I had on my brain when I was walking in here today. And I guess that case, it wasn't about closing that case. That is a proud moment. It was about changing that mom's mind about what the role of CPS was going to be in her life. When she first, well, I don't know when she first. I got that case transferred to me when another social worker was, I guess, burnt out or whatever. And when I got that case, everybody was very angry. It felt like professionals were angry, family was angry. Everybody had a level of frustration and fear attached to their emails, attached to their phone calls, and in their face-to-face. And so it was kind of hard to step into, and what I realized very quickly is that unless I was able to create some kind of bond with the mom and have her side with somebody who's got some good intentions for her daughter, it was going to go nowhere quickly. So what I did is there was a big stir about how visitations needed to work, and I know that Chilton and everybody else was involved in trying to get this contract set up with a visitation center in Statesville. And about 25 emails into it, I just decided that I would take mom to Statesville and I would do the visitation myself, which is what we did. We did a team meeting kind of earlier in the day, and then I took her. I didn't just take her. I took, mom and the kid and kid's sister and the aunt and and then one of her little kids in a car seat, and we drove over to, Charlotte was right next door to where she was staying, and we went shopping for the day, and we hung out, and we had a meal together, and and mom rode shotgun that entire time, so we were able to have some general conversation about, who are you, what do you do besides hate on your social workers, and for me, she's like, oh, what do you do besides steal people's kids, so we had this time to really get to know one another, and I think that was a couple weeks into getting that case, and I think that was the pivotal moment for that family and I, for them to understand that I was there to look out for their family's interests and not there for some kind of hidden agenda.
So you just said lots of stuff. I might have to ask that many questions. But one thing that really comes to mind for me is thinking about the intentionality of like, okay, I'm going down this path of visits and Chilton and contracts and all this stuff. What made you decide, or what within you as a worker made you say, because you said you knew the bond was going to be key. You knew, I was part of those emails too at one point, and I have no idea why. I facilitated a meeting once.
They were like CC'd to like 20 people.
Yeah. But what made you decide, screw it. This is kind of insanity, 25 emails in, I'm just gonna boom, go do this.
Well, it was insanity because the mom was kind of refusing to be a part of that process and didn't see why it needed to happen, and was dragging the group home into it. She thought the group home should be able to provide that service, and because mom's inability to want to work with that program, she had made the decision that she wasn't going to see her child. And when I went to go see the kid, all she wanted in the world was to see her family. So for me, it was a bit of, I'm tired of dealing with this chaos and trying to figure out the contracts from the logistical end of it. But also it was like, this kid really just needs to see her family. Here she is, 2 hours from home, knows about, one person out here. And she just really needs to spend some time with them.
And so the child had articulated she just wanted to see her.
Yeah, she wanted to see her people.
Because when I first heard you, it seemed like it was more about mom and meeting mom where she was at, but it's really more about
It was kind of meeting everybody where they're
keeping the child's best interest in mind. And so what about that as a worker is important to you? Because you've been doing this work for
a real long time, yeah.
a while.
I think that's the difference in foster care versus, I did family in-home for about 5 years, and that was really, even though you're working for the safety of the child, you were really more focused in on the parents and what you're doing to build up supports around the parents so that they can be successful in raising their kid. Where foster care is very different. You're in a position where you're spending a lot of one-on-one time with these children and really learning more about the trauma that they've been through, learning more about, their hopes and desires for the future. So I kind of lost sense of where I was going with that. But so, hearing that is just really important, and I think that, the well-being needs of the kids or their wishes really drive what you're doing. I think the same thing goes for kids that you talk to that have been super traumatized by their parents and are fearful of them. It kind of drives what you're doing in this work the same way. It's about, it's still about seeing are there ways for these kids to get back to their home safely, and are there ways to repair this relationship. But at the end of the day, you're listening to that kid and hearing what they really want, what they desire.
Do you remember a moment where, and again, I'm just trying to sort of bring myself into that space, right, or the room or wherever it was, but do you remember the moment where you just kind of said, this is ridiculous, I'm just going to make this happen? Do you remember what was going through your mind, or who you were talking to, or what happened to say?
I do. I was talking to Mom on the phone and felt like I was in a position of trying to convince her why she needed to go to the family visitation center, and it felt like it was turning into not really an argument, but she was completely closed off from listening to anything I had to say at that point in time. And it had kind of been an ongoing occurrence where I felt like every time I talked to her, she was closed off to anything that I wanted to say because she was so burnt by her experience with the department. So just, for me it was kind of, I don't know, just conceding to a way to get these two together. So I was just through a phone call. I said, you know what, we'll just do it.
Was that your idea or her idea?
It was my idea. And she was really receptive at the beginning, but I think didn't really know what she was going to get into. Didn't know what that was going to be like. But I think as part of my practice, I try really hard to build good relationships with folks, because I feel like the better relationship that you have with somebody, the more likely you're going to be able to communicate them into coming to an agreement with you later on down the line. It's much easier, worst case scenarios when we have children that are going to be adopted in their biological families, or maybe they're going from still seeing their kid every other week to probably seeing their kid maybe once every 6 months if they're lucky. It's much easier for me to have that conversation and have them hear me and have me be empathetic to their feelings when I've got a good level of communication with them. I think it means more to them to know that their kids are going to be safe and that people are actually looking out for their best interests when it's somebody that they've grown to, they don't have to like me, but they've grown to trust that I'm going to follow through with what I do and that I'm going to listen to them.
So this notion of relationships, and I'm kind of the science of safety dude who talks about this stuff all the time, right? So obviously to me that's huge. And you talked a lot about that. What about the relationships piece? You've done in-home, you've done foster care. What else about that do you think is so key to what we do? It seems like for this case in particular, it seems like that was a really driving. Everything you talked about so far is engagement, partnership, and relationship. That's really, you haven't really talked about the safety issues. You talked about the partnership.
Right. Well, the other things that were driving this case were the therapists at the group home who were listening to the kid talk about what wasn't working at home, what wasn't safe at home. And for this particular case, it was that The kid she'd had some physical abuse as punishment that had eventually led to her coming into care, but that was really a small issue compared to what was really going on with this family, and it just took time and investment to listen to people to hear what was really going on, and it was really family dynamics between sisters in this case and the mother's. I don't know. It's kind of her discipline in the home and the way she communicates with her kids, I think, is kind of driven by her faith, honestly. And so, kind of understanding that and working a lot with Mom to get her to the place to understand that, sure, this is how you believe things should happen, and this is how you were raised, and this is what you believe with your religion, but you're closing out your kids because you're refusing to see it any other way. So that took months and months to get her to that spot. But because we were able to bring her to that spot where she was more open to listening to her kids and more willing to try different things in the home, that's what helped eliminate the safety issues.
And I just gotta be honest, because I dealt with them several times and had several meetings. I'm just amazed, it's so cool when I saw that had happened. That's just so awesome.
Yeah, she actually came up to me in court the very last day and gave me a big hug.
Wow.
And it was just kind of like one of those moments where I was like, oh, I've never seen this coming.
Yeah. So what about that hug is important to you as a social worker? When you think back over however many years you've been doing this, what about that hug is important?
I think it's, I think that it shows that, at the end of the day, you're not just doing this for a paycheck, you are having impact on people's lives. And I think that's the most important and the scariest thing about this job all in one. Meaning that, to have that kind of impact and know that you help somebody, that's great, and that's a wonderful feeling, but it's also really scary to know that level of impact could, you can make one decision or one kind of statement that could really change somebody's life forever. And I feel that way lots of times on the stand in particular when you're testifying. Everything I'm saying is going to pave the path for this family.
Right. The scariest and...
It's the best and the scariest.
The best and the scariest, yeah.
It's all the same. That's what people tell me all the time. I can never do your job. I'm like, you're right. And I'm sometimes surprised that I can do my job because it's really intense.
What difference, Amy, does it make that you're able to sort of balance? It seems like you're holding two very competing issues, the fear that we have, and there's a quote from her name is Melanie Samuels, and she made a great quote, and she said sometimes you just have to work scared, because so much of what we do is we're just kind of putting it out there, not really, none of us really know. But so what do you do as a worker to be able to hold that balance between this can be the best thing and the scariest thing at the whole time, and being okay with working scared?
Well,
does that make sense? I want to make sure you're tracking me.
I think a lot of it goes back to partnerships and relationships. When you have that fear about what you're doing, it's so important to be open and work on the same page as the other providers in the community. I say that lots of times, my coworkers at work, some people think that means the other social workers on the floor. They're not really my coworkers. My coworkers are the therapist with this family, the guardian ad litem with this family, and those are the people that I'm working with all day long and that I'm talking to on the phone. So having good partnerships with them and communicating and knowing that this decision that you're making has been discussed up and down the river about a family before you get there. That's really important, and I think that helps with the fear factor of it. And I think the other thing too is I'm just really direct with my families. In the most positive way I can be, but today, for instance, I had to tell a pre-adoptive aunt that we may not get the TPR because of some things happening in her case, but it's fearful for me on a lot of levels, because I'm scared for what will happen for that kid. I'm scared that this lady will decide I can't do guardianship because I can't be, in a relationship with this mother long term. But at the same time, if I don't tell her and allow her the opportunity to process it, then I'm kind of doing a disservice. So I think all of these things kind of go into the fearfulness of it. But I think for a lot of people that are in this job too, there's a level of adrenaline that you run off of, and if you don't have it, then I guess you're on the burnout train and maybe you're on your way to intake. But if you have it, then then there's a piece of that drives you in this job.
So what drives you in this job? Are you an adrenaline junkie? Is there more to it? What's the driving, because you just really, I think, talked about so many things that we aspire to do as an agency, really thinking about looking at the trauma, not making judgments based on just outward appearances, building relationship and partnership, and maybe going above and beyond a little bit, taking the time. I can imagine how many hours you spent with Deanna in the car going down to Statesville shopping.
An insane amount of hours in the car.
Yeah, an insane amount of hours. And I don't know that anybody else would have even taken that on with her, much less they would have been like, hell no, there's no way I'm riding for 8 hours. You know what I mean?
I had Sunday dinner with that family, don't even talk to me about it.
And then you talked about, really listening to the kids and understanding their perspective, and that, okay, we had physical abuse, but that was just scratching the surface. There was so much more to it than that, and working scared, and so what's driving you? Are you an adrenaline junkie? What's behind Amy and sort of being able to hold all these different things
Right.
out there?
I'm not an adrenaline junkie. Well, this is the part that maybe can't go into anyone's training, is that I feel like a lot of people that work in this industry may have their own, well, I don't say maybe their own personal issues, but there's something about being involved in this drama, something about being involved in a conflictual situation and being able to problem solve that they yearn for. And so I think a lot of people in this industry, you do it as your job, and you do it really well, but you do it as your job so that in your personal life, in your private life, you don't have that. You're able to be more calm, more calm with your friends, and maybe have a less conflict at home, or that's how I see it, and I see that for several people that I work with. We're the most laid back people when we walk out the door here, but when we're here, we're in the middle of everything that's going on, and really, really gung-ho for it. So I think there's that piece to it that kind of keeps you going in this job, but I've been doing this for a long time now, 10 years now, and with this new job that I got, really more what I'm into is the idea of making the process easier for people, and not for the people that work here, because it's never going to be easy for us, because there's always going to be a new form, and I've come to I've come to accept that over time. But for the foster parents that we're working with, how to help them navigate the system better, how can we really educate these people about what they're about to walk into when they come through the door? Because I think if we can give them more education on the front end, then the more likely we are to retain them for the long run. So how can we better suit them? But this particular job that I have, also I'm really interested in the programming for our teens. That's what I've been working with for probably the last 2 years, is mostly really high-end teens that are...
As a foster care worker.
Foster care worker, yeah. Those kids that pop from place to place and are high needs and, always suspended, always something. And the best moments I've had with these kids are when we're able to finally go get their driver's license so they can get a job, and going through that process, helping them, helping them, okay, you got this job, now what do we need, and helping them get the correct shoes and their work uniforms, and preparing for that, and the other side of that, helping them with their interview skills and stuff. That's what I really like, and I think that's what these kids need, because it's if I have to get one more case of a mom, or I get her 2-year-old on my caseload because she just got out of foster care and now she's a hot mess, it's we don't need any more of those cases. What is the word for that? Is that recidivism?
Recidivism, yeah.
Recidivism. That's such a great need.
They're still kids themselves.
There are still kids. Babies
Yeah.
having babies.
Yeah.
So I just think there's so much work that can be done there with those older kids, that they don't have to repeat the same cycles of mistakes that their parents made. Because a lot of these kids that I'm talking about, reunification is long gone for their parents. Maybe we're trying to work them not to be with their grandma or something, but they're kind of their own independent people at this point in time. They've been through so much in their life. They're survivors. They understand how to get their needs met. Whether it's legal or illegal, they're going to make it happen. So how can we hone them to be productive citizens? And I've been really fortunate. There's this one young lady that I work with who goes to Western Carolina, and I sat and had lunch with her the other day, and I was just tell me your turning point.
I know her. She's impressive.
MD.
Yeah.
She's amazing, and I was tell me what your turning point was.
I got to ride in the car with her for an hour.
Did you?
And just same sort of thing, I was just overcome with
And she, and her answer to me was that she's like, well, I sat in a meeting and everybody I was with told me that I was going to be just like my mom when I turned 18. And she said, screw that, I won't be like my mom. And I'm sure she used more choice words than that because, because of who she is. But, and she was like, screw that, I'm not going to do it. And so, here she is, she's about to be a young mom, but she's also about to be, finish up her junior year in college. Like, she's amazing. And I feel like there needs to be more kids like that, and it's one thing to say and it's another thing to figure out a pathway to get there. And so that's what I'm about, is trying to build some channels for these kids.
So we went off on a totally different topic there, which is awesome. I'm going to bring it back
totally
to,
different topic.
and we may revisit it in a moment if that's okay. But I wanted to get back to the family that you worked with, and we were sort of talking about the difference between holding the fear, right, which I think sort of pushed us into this place. But what difference do you think your ability to slow down and take the time? To me, it sounds like you just decided, I'm going to take whatever time it needs to make this work, as opposed to, we talked about the rush and we get stuck in the whirlwind and everything's go, go, go and we've got limited time. But what about you made you decide, you know what, screw it, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to do Sunday dinner, I'm going to ride in a car for 8 or 10 hours and just really give it this effort. What about you decided to do that? What difference has that made?
Well, I think for this family, I wanted to do it to build a relationship, and I wanted to do it to show mom that when we said child and family team, we meant child and family team. That you're a player in it. You're not just an auxiliary person. So, that was the beginning of doing it. But then, the thing is like once you spend a lot of time with these people, you kind of like them. Like, I like her. I like her family. Like, they're cool. Like, I appreciate that they're that big old family at Cracker Barrel that hold hands and pray before they eat. Like, that's to me, that's not my life, so it's kind of interesting to me. So maybe that's part of it, is just like if you, having that true interest in like how different people live their lives. This is truly an amazing opportunity to see that day in and day out.
So what difference did that make, do you think, in the outcome? Just really deciding it may impact my paperwork or may push something else out for a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and do this.
It was about the outcome. It was about this kid being able to go home, be comfortable enough to stay in her mom's home where she felt like she could follow directions, to a degree. Don't get me wrong, she's a teenager.
Yeah.
She could follow, and for mom to be able to, to show some skills and how she's going to practice her patience with this kid. So that's the ultimate outcome. So spending that time so that a kid could do that and not be trapped in foster care until she's 18, like, why would you not make another choice?
So what's your learning from that program? It sounds like you operate like this pretty regular, but
yeah.
What's your takeaway or learning, kind of reflecting on this family and the work that you've done, and maybe what learning can we share with other people?
That's a tough question.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, that is the whole point. The whole point. Well, again, I think it's about seeing people as people and appreciating something about them. And it's about finding that one strength or that one interest or that one commonality that you have with somebody so you can build that relationship. Because again, like, I'm a true believer, like, if there's not a relationship there and you can't sit down and have an honest talk with somebody about what's going on in their life, then they're jumping through hoops to get services done, but you know what, you're jumping through hoops too, just to get your case closed. And the chances of it being successful are slim to none. So that's kind of, that's my takeaway with building relationships. And when I think of this family, I think of that, like, looking for long-term success was a real reason for doing it. I think with a lot of the other kids that I work with, it's with these teens that I work with, it's about letting them know that there really is an adult that cares about you. Like, you haven't been a throwaway. And it's extremely important to me that they understand that and they have that sense of, sense of self-esteem or sense of belonging, even if it's just coming from me. You see someone once a week. Everybody deserves that.
And so what difference do you think it's made for this child in thinking about your work and your efforts? And it doesn't have to be you, just maybe even just the efforts of social workers in general, that when we work to connect and engage and, because you're talking about kind of the aspiration that we have in most of our cases, and this one worked out really, really well. But what does that mean for these teens and these kids when we're able to put that level of energy into it?
For this kid, it meant that, I mean, it kind of meant the world to her. Like, she got to go home. So she got to be in her home community. She got to graduate middle school at her home school, because she is really involved with some other social workers now when I left, like some mental health social workers. I mean, she's getting to go to art camp for the summer, complete scholarship, which is a real passion of hers. And it was something that was getting thrown to the wayside because of her, behaviors and mental health issues. So she's gotten to focus back on that. She came out to me as lesbian during our case, and so she's got to have an outlet now where she can express that, where beforehand she felt really sheltered by her family's religion and things like that. So, I mean, I think it was really eye-opening for her, and even though it was really hard, and if you asked her if you could go back in time and never do that again, she'd say, absolutely, I'd never do that again. Because I don't know that she has the insight to see some of these opportunities that have come to her, but I think that is it. And like, I mean, maybe she'll graduate, maybe she won't graduate, but regardless, I know that she's got at least 2 other ongoing adult supports out of this that she hadn't had before, outside of her family. Her guardian ad litem still sees her almost every single Sunday, even though the case is closed, and that's somebody that she can talk to and is someone that's really open to helping her out with her art interests and things like that. And she also has another lady through her mental health team that she still gets up with.
That's great. So you build a network.
Yeah,
Really.
absolutely. And and I think because being able to bridge that frustration, agitation, anger, whatever you want to call it with Mom, being able to bridge that and being the first person to wave the white flag with her and be like, we're gonna do this together. Like, it's gonna be hard for you, but it's okay. We're gonna be okay. You'll like me, I promise. I think I probably told her that the first time I met her, and she probably looked at me like she would kill me. But,
Yeah.
but I think because I was able to bridge that, like, it was like, great, now everybody get behind me on the bridge and let's all walk over together. And I think that's a testament to like these people still being involved, even though no one's getting paid to be with this family anymore. They just care a lot about this kid, and they care a lot about the family, want to see him successful.
And so you talked about this kid. What difference does it make on our workforce? And you're going to be a supervisor like next week, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be in a different role. So
Yeah.
maybe let me shift the question to your role as a supervisor. What difference do you think it makes if as a supervisor you're able to help others recognize the importance of this partnership and engagement as we work with families, whether it's in foster families and licensing, or whether it's in foster care parent type scenarios, or the kids?
Mm-hmm.
What difference can that make at an organizational level?
Well, I think it builds for positive morale. I mean, for people to experience the successes, it certainly makes you feel better in work. And I'm thinking, like, I just lost my train of thought. It was here and now it's gone.
Positive morale, experience success.
Right, experience success. Because I think that everybody at this job has a little bit of that helper nature in them, and if they're able to help these people be successful, and they're feeling good about what you do. Yeah, I had something more profound that I wanted to share, and I lost it.
So moving to your role as a up-and-coming supervisor, what difference will that make if you're able to build that partnership and engagement, and then sort of transfer that to the families that you're working with? Because morale, I think, is, and maybe I misunderstood this, morale's more around like the workers here, but what difference will that make with your team and your foster? You talked a lot about engaging foster parents and building capacity,
Well, I think that if I'm able to help people see the importance of that, and they're doing that with their teams, that for folks that are working with foster parents, it helps on the worker side. I think it does a lot. Like, it can help eliminate crisis situations. It can help the placements last longer. It could maybe lead towards more cheered parenting experiences that last way past when kids go back home to mom and dad. Like, I think all those things are great benefits from it. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. So let's scale. Everybody's favorite time.
Okay.
This is when we scale. So on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being this is probably your proudest moment in your 10 years of child protective experience, and you're just thrilled, like you can't even believe, you're astonished, right? And 0 is this is nothing. This is nowhere on that scale. This is not even a major success story, where would you put this in terms of your proudest moments? In fact, yeah, this case that we've been digging into a little bit today, and you've got quite a bit of context because you've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
Where would you put this in terms of?
I don't know, 5 maybe.
5.
Mm-hmm.
So what brings it to a 5?
That it was successful, but it wasn't successful because of the work that I did. It was successful because of the work that the family did. So it is a great success, but it's not my success. It's in this case, it truly was the family's success. All I did was point them in the right direction. They did all the work. And I've had other cases where I felt like I'd really, logged the time and the hours. And I know that seems like, how could this not possibly be that case if she was
No, I'm
with his
listening.
family all the time?
I'm certainly listening.
But it's not for me. Like, I have another family now that I have 2 kids, and that case, even though it's not resolved, I was able to get the 18-year-old to sign on as a CARS, which I'm really,
That's huge,
really proud of. It took a long time to get it there, and it took a family that hated me, and I feel like, and hated each other, all the sides of the family, and I've gotten them to a place where they all sit at the table now and can sit at team meetings together, can plan. I mean, like, I've got the paternal side of the family now digging in, wanting the kids to go to the mom side of the family. So I mean, like, that to me took so much more communication and effort and time than the other case did.
And yet, I heard you say very early on in this case was the same way.
Right. Maybe
So
because
again,
I had it for a shorter period of time. Maybe that's why I said
Yeah, I mean, everything you told me, and I know the family, and everything you
Yeah.
told me was exactly what you described about these other cases that
Right.
maybe you take more pride in. And then you said something that always strikes me. I didn't really do any of the work. The family really did the work, and yet you've just described to me
Right.
just awesome, wonderfully. I wish I could figure out a way to transfer that, like just suck it out of you somehow and give some to some other people, right? Because that's the work.
Right.
Like you just described for me, like what we want to see happening, which is creating the space for them to do the work
Right.
and not doing it for them. To me, if I were to scale this, and again, your scale is your scale, I'm just amazed. It's just awesome work to hear you talk about the partnership and the engagement and creating the space to be successful and showing that you care and getting the child's voice and understanding the trauma and letting them figure it out and building a network. I mean, that's really what we're in this business for. So I'm just extremely honored to hear about it, number one, and really proud of you as a person, a worker, to just do that and amazed with your humility and as well. But I also want to make sure you get credit because you did a ton of work. And sometimes it's not how much we do, it's what we do. Right? It's that what, and let the family inform the how. And I just thought that this was a wonderful example of that.
Right.
I think we could dig in. Now I want to do like 2 more AIs and
Talk about the other ones.
and talk about the other ones, But due to time, I know you have a meeting and I have a meeting. I'm going to sort of stop talking about that case now, but maybe ask a few follow-up questions if that's okay.
Sure.
So do you find, again, I just want this to be a meaningful thing for staff, and do you think that this is a helpful time to slow down and just have it, because I'm not your boss, we don't know each other that well, it's kind of probably weird and awkward a little bit, although we know each other a little bit, it's not like I'm a complete stranger,
Right.
but is it helpful to just sort of slow down and think into and through kind of a process that you've been through in a reflective way?
Yeah, it's helpful.
Okay.
It's interesting because you're right. Like you never have this conversation. So the conversation is always based on what crisis is at your doorstep right now. So it is a different turn to do it. That's what I can say about it.
So
It's different.
And so it being different, do you think that being intentional and slowing down and digging into some of this good stuff could be beneficial or helpful for our department?
I do. I don't know. This job is just really, this job is very odd, Nick. I mean,
I'm
I
doing
don't
it.
say, yeah,
yeah.
because that's what's funny about signs of safety. This is a little off topic, so sorry, but
No, that's
what's so
fine. We
funny
can
about-
edit this out if we need to.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So the thing about signs of safety, which is so funny to me, is like when it got introduced or whatever, I was like, oh, well, this is what we already do, but we just are going to call it something different now. And so that's how, and it's not that there's not benefit behind it, and I'm certainly glad that everyone's learning this process, but I feel like if you are doing your job right, you've already been doing signs of safety for a real long time. And it is concerning to me as a taxpayer. If people haven't been doing it, it's like, well, what have you been doing for all these years if you haven't been working with family to help solve their problems? You know, like it's kind of a scary thought. Like, what was the alternative if we weren't doing this before? So, So I think knowing that, like, I think this process is helpful. Like, it is helpful, I guess, for people to hear how other people roll in their cases, what's beneficial for other people to use. But it's really, I think for me, it goes, like, you know, like I said before, like, that's my personality. Like, I'm interested in finding out new things about people, and that's part of what drives me to want to work with these families and really get to know them, is because I'm just maybe kind of curious by
The
nature.
genuine curiosity,
Yeah.
just really being open to.
Yeah, to the new experience. And so I guess if, you know, and so it works for me to take this approach with social work because I kind of like it like that. And, you know, so it makes me wonder, is that if somebody that's maybe naturally a little more quieter, or someone who sits back and listens more than I do, like if it is beneficial for them, because will it really be applicable in their day-to-day life? Does that make sense? And I'm talking about certain aspects, not the whole philosophy of signs of safety by any means, but just like, you know, bits and pieces of it.
When I'm really talking about appreciative inquiry, and again, I agree with you that many of our workers were doing lots of things that are incorporated within signs of safety, engaging, partnering. And then many people had to learn new things and new stuff and new skills and really culturally think about it from a different place. And a lot of that's at the administrative level too. It's not always at the practitioner level, right? I think a big part of the shift has really been occurring not so much at a practitioner level, but at an administrative level and representing workforce and all the different things that are happening to try to really have this be a practitioner-based way of doing work with families. And I've heard wonderful feedback from community partners, and you know, so something's changed. Maybe not for you at an individual level, but something's changing, I think, at an organizational level. But for you as an individual who's having great success in your casework, and I think that you're pretty driven still. You don't seem like you're
I'm not burning out yet.
burning out or anything. You got this new position coming. What about this process, if anything, is helpful for you as a practitioner?
Well,
To slow down and
to
just
slow down, right.
take an hour out of the day to talk about good work.
Well, I've never had an AI before, so I've never really had anybody inquire about all this little thing that's happened. So I think of coming on as a supervisor, like it's gonna be, you know, I could, it's kind of a nice refresher to me to think about appreciating what other folks do. Like, I'm a gold star at telling everybody like what a super job they did or whatever, and like even leaving them thank you notes or treats. But I think it means a lot more to sit down and like really hash out the awesome things that people do. And you know, and in general, it's a good way to identify people's strengths too. Like, you know, I think in this job, what I hope in my new team, where I'm able to help grab onto and encompass a little bit, is like really figuring out what people's strengths are and being able to divide up some of the crazy assignments and things that you have to do every single day. Like if someone's got a real passion for like technology or whatever, is there a way that they can hone in on some of those aspects of this whole licensing world, and you know, or spreadsheets, or you know, different parts of the training or whatever it is.
Right.
So I think this probably lends toward really finding out where people are at.
Good. Well, hopefully it was a helpful process for me again. And I'm no expert at this or anything. I'm learning too, you know, It's really just about hopefully showing a genuine curiosity, just like you've been sharing with me. That's really, I think, what Appreciative Inquiry is about, is really having a genuine curiosity about the ground level work, because there's so much awesome stuff happening, and it's really about stopping that from happening in a vacuum, where it's just like, Amy just did all this awesome stuff, but nobody knows about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But creating a space where we can start to share good work to learn from each other, you know, and which is why I tape it, for your learning and then for the potential learning that others could gain from hearing your story and your, you know, your words and your struggles, and that to me is the beauty. It's really what it says. It's appreciative inquiry. It's really finding out the best in people and the work that they're doing, and digging into it so that we can figure out how to do more of it. As opposed to what is our natural tendency in child protection, to react to crisis. You said it better. You said it way more better than I did. But it's like from one crisis to the next crisis, the next. You know.
I mean, that's the world we live in too, because it's a crisis space. It's that way for supervisors too. So you're more likely to hear about something punitive that you did wrong than you are something you did right any day of the week.
Which is one of the reasons why this is such a wonderful tool, is it breaks that cycle. You know, it breaks the cycle of go. And for me, as a you know, full disclosure, it breaks my cycle too. You know, it's like my favorite thing I get to do, honestly, because it's sort of like, whew, man, this job is awesome. You know, and I think you just captured that for me. Like this, we just have an awesome job. So, thank you very much.
4 out of 5.
What's that?
4 out of 5 days.
Yeah, well, it's not always perfect, but it's.
Right.
I think it's a privilege to get to do this work, and then to hear people doing it well, and to have the job I have to get to talk to people about it. I mean, I'm so lucky to have that opportunity as well. So I really thank you. I'm going to give you a high five. That wasn't very high. That was kind of a mid 5. Do you have any questions or anything before I hit stop?
Nope, no questions.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So what are you gonna do with all your tapes? What do you stop?
What do you mean what am I going to do on my tapes?